He turned away every woman until a Navajo widow asked, "You looking for a partner or just a roof over your head?" Caleb Holt was a man of few words, known across the desert hamlets as the rancher who had everything a woman could desire. Strong build, steady gaze, and a voice that could soothe a spooked colt. But no one could rein him in. Ever since the war faded and the ashes of his shattered past settled, he lived alone on the edge of the county, patching corrals, herding livestock, and guarding his heart tighter than the revolver at his side. Folks in town murmured about him, how he brushed off every woman who offered companionship, how even the school teacher's daughter couldn't crack his defenses. Caleb had learned that love was a treasure no man could afford in a world carved from grief. Hey, if you're enjoying this tale so far, hit that like button and subscribe to keep these stories coming. Oh, and drop a comment. Where are you listening from? I'd love to know. One late summer dusk, as he rode along the mesa path, a plume of smoke curled up from the horizon. Not the soft haze of a cook fire, but the acrid black of burning lives. He spurred his horse, hooves thundering against the cracked earth. When he reached the clearing, the sight gutted him. A small Navajo encampment lay in ruins, the ground still hot from gunfire. Amid the wreckage, a woman stood, her face smudged with soot, her arms shielding two young children. She didn't weep, didn't scream. She stood like a lone juniper after a tempest, bowed but unbroken. Caleb swung down from his saddle and approached slowly. "You need help?" he asked, voice low. Her eyes, sharp as flint, met his without a trace of fear. "She need a spade," she said plainly. He pulled one from his saddlebag, and together they buried the dead, her husband among them. Not a word passed between them until the sun dipped below the ridges. As night took hold, the woman turned to him and said, "You ride alone. That's simple when no one's waiting for you." He didn't reply. Instead, he kindled a small fire for her and the children, sharing what little food he carried. She accepted with a nod, keeping her distance. Her name, he learned later, was Miri, a widow, half Navajo, half pioneer, caught between two worlds that both shunned her. Come morning, Caleb readied his horse to move on, but Miri stopped him. "You came when no one else would," she said. "If you leave now, the next man who come won't be kind." It wasn't a plea, just a hard truth. Caleb glanced at the little girl, clutching her mother's shawl, and the boy, trying to look tough, gripping a stick like a shotgun. He exhaled, feeling that old pang in his chest he thought was long buried. "I'll take you to my place," he said at last. "You can stay till you sort out what's next." That's how it started. For weeks, they lived in a fragile truce on Caleb's spread. Miri worked from sunrise to sundown, stoking the hearth, cooking meals, and lending a hand in the stockyard. She never grumbled, never asked for favors, never sought sympathy. Caleb watched her with quiet admiration. She carried herself with a grace forged in hardship, and in her stillness, he saw echoes of his own solitude. Yo, if this story's hitting you, smash that like and subscribe for more. And hey, where are you tuning in from? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious. The kids, Sage and Kale, slowly filled the quiet with giggles and life. But as the days grew cooler, the town started to whisper. Some called Miri a blight, others a temptress, stealing a man's soul. When Caleb rode into town for supplies, men smirked and asked if he'd gone soft. He ignored them until one night when a cowhand made the mistake of slurring her with a name too vile to repeat. Caleb's fist flew before the man could finish, blood staining the dirt. By the time the sheriff showed up, Caleb was already home.
pacing outside the cabin, hands still trembling.
Miri stepped out, her face serene in the moonlight. "You didn't have to fight for me," she said softly. "I didn't," he answered. "I fought because they don't know the truth." "And what's that truth?" she asked. "That you're tougher than all of us," he said simply. For the first time she smiled, a faint, real smile. The next morning she found him mending the fence line. She stood there, watching for a long spell, before finally saying, "You turn away every woman who crosses your trail. Why let me stay?" Caleb looked up, meeting her gaze. "Because you never asked to." The days slipped into fall, and though no words of love passed between them, something unspoken bloomed in the stillness. Caleb found himself listening for her voice, watching her hands move, noticing how the sunlight danced in her hair. Mary saw how he cared for her children, teaching Cale to ride, coaxing Sage to laugh again. Yet she also saw his fear, the kind that kept a man from ever reaching out. One evening, as a storm brewed on the horizon, she stepped outside and found him on the porch, staring into the distance. The air was thick, heavy with more than rain. She sat beside him and said, "You looking for a partner or just a roof over your head?" Her question hung there like a clap of thunder. Caleb turned, meeting her eyes. "I don't know if I remember how to want anything anymore." Miri's lips curved into a wistful smile. "Then maybe it's time you try." Lightning streaked across the plains, and for the first time in years, Caleb felt alive. But neither of them knew the past they'd both buried was about to claw its way back. The storm broke that night, and with it came the ghosts of Caleb's past. A band of bounty hunters appeared at the edge of his land, their faces grim, their voices colder than the wind. They weren't after Caleb, they wanted Miri. They accused her kin of aiding attacks on settlers, demanding she be turned over. Caleb stood on the porch, rifle in hand, rain streaming off his hat. "She's not going anywhere." The leader spat into the mud. "You ready to die for her, rancher?" Caleb didn't flinch. "I already have." What came next was pandemonium, the pound of hooves, the snap of gunfire, the storm's roar swallowing the cries. Caleb fought like a man possessed, driven not by rage, by something deeper. Miri, refusing to cower, grabbed her husband's old bow and joined the fray, her aim steady through the downpour. When silence finally fell, the ground was slick with blood and rain, and only the wind dared stir. Caleb dropped to his knees, wounded but breathing. Miri rushed to him, pressing her hands to his side. "You fool! You should have let me go!" He winced, half smiling. "You asked if I wanted a partner or just a roof over my head. I finally know the answer." She looked at him, tears blending with the rain. "And what's that?" "I want both, if it's you." For a long moment she was silent. Then she leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. The storm softened as if the sky itself sighed in relief. By dawn the threat had passed, and Caleb's wounds were bandaged. The children slept inside, safe. Miri stood outside the cabin, watching the sun pierce the clouds. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope. Weeks turned to months. The land mended, the gossip faded, and life found its rhythm. Caleb rebuilt the fences and taught Cale the ways of the ranch. Miri planted desert blooms near the graves of her kin, honoring the lost, but never forgetting. One evening, as the light turned amber across the mesa, Caleb walked to where she stood and handed her a small coral ring he'd carved himself. "You once said you didn't need saving," he told her, "and you were right. You saved me instead." She looked at the ring, then at him. "You sure about this, rancher?" He nodded. "Been sure since the day you asked me that question." She slid the ring onto her finger and smiled. "Then maybe it's time we stop just getting by and start living." And so they did. Two souls bound by loss,
tempered by fire and the quiet strength of love. The man who once turned away every woman had found the one who didn't ask for his heart. She simply reminded him it was still there. The desert wind carried their laughter across the horizon, a reminder that sometimes the hardest hearts are softened not by fire, but by the steady courage of someone who refuses to give up on them.
Wow, what a journey, right? If you love this story, give this video some hype. Smash that like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Let's keep these tales alive. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.